I did a lot of theater, and this feels very reminiscent. I feel like we should end scene.
Plus, we have these fancy microphones on.
We do. We feel very impressive up here.
But good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. And I'm just thrilled to be here with Dr. Messenger this afternoon and actually welcome her to not only UT Knoxville, but to Tennessee. I think she moved here last summer and assumed her new role as dean at the UTK School of Social Work. So
I did. And I also want to say we have a campus here in Nashville that we always want to claim. That's right. Kim's giving me a shout out in the back.
Good. Well, why don't I just jump in right there?
Right.
You are new to Tennessee. This is your first Child Advocacy Days event here with us here in Nashville. Being new to the state and in your role as the dean of the School of Social Work, what are your perceptions or observations so far about our state and its approach to social work?
I have to say that I am in love with Tennessee. And I'm not just shining you on, I really am. I just feel like it is beautiful, the people are wonderful, and I am so excited to be someplace where I don't have to explain what ACEs are. Yes, give yourselves a hand of Absolutely. I have to say that's very different. I've been in Kansas, I've been in North Carolina, and in North Carolina, we've been fighting this fight around ACEs and getting people to understand what they are, and not just the effects or the very specific things, incidents of trauma, but what underlies and causes these traumatic incidents to happen, and addressing things at the root. And I think this is really exciting that the conversation is already happening here. And it's not just happening, it's part of our curriculum. And that's also exciting. And it's a long-term, it's been a part of our curriculum. And so that's exciting to me, being part of a college of social work that is focused on the needs of children and their communities and their families from a policy standard, a standpoint, not just looking at practice. Both areas are important. So I think that's been a really big thing.
Great.
I also was a little disappointed in the football this past season. I was really looking forward to that. But it got better, and they tell me it's a growth year, so I'm working on that.
So would you say Tennessee's on the forefront
Absolutely.
Far as ACEs education?
Without a doubt. And the fact that last night we heard from someone in the parks, who works for the Parks and Recreation, who was talking about ACEs. And I have to say the extent of which, across the government, people talking about this, across the state, we're talking about it on our ag campus, as well as on the main campus, as well as in social work and nursing and all of the different helping fields. I think that's really exciting, and I think that's really moving us forward. And I'm not the only new one around here. You've been in Tennessee a long time, but you're new in this role. You started your new role just about the same time as I did, right?
I am new to this role. I'm not new to Tennessee state government, but I've been with Department of Children's Services since last May. Previously to that, I worked in the Haslam administration. So my job had a shelf life. My job ended when Governor Haslam's job ended. So I luckily landed at what I think is one of the best department in state government, DCS, and we just reach so many Tennesseans and touch so many lives every day, 24/7. Our case managers are out there working on weekends and holidays, and our child protective services investigators are just really dedicated state employees who really care about children and families. So
now
I landed in a great place.
You started out in communications there, right? And then you moved into the chief of staff's
I did.
office. So what's the biggest challenge about trying to get people to understand the work that's happening at DCS from a communication standpoint?
Right. So I knew DCS on a very high level and dealt with some of the issues that DCS dealt with on a very, very high level. But now that I'm actually in the trenches at DCS, I find it very challenging that it's sometimes difficult for us to tell our story because of child privacy protection laws and confidentiality, and it can be frustrating for me as a communicator because I see what our 4,000 DCS employees are doing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and not being able to share all those stories is sometimes frustrating to me. It's also been a challenge to change the public perception of DCS. We're working on that. In fact, that is one of the items in our 4-year strategic plan that we just implemented. And it's basically to change the perception of DCS, our case managers, what we do, and all the good things that we do to help children and families across the state.
Yeah, we have the same issue when you're trying to talk about social work. I think that, I've started to say when we look at how we're going to advertise and brand the UT College of Social Work, we need to not just say, hey, come get a degree with us. We need to say what you can do with it. Because there's so many things you can do with a social work degree that people don't think about. And when we talk to people and if we ask anybody, what do social workers do? We give out checks and we take people's kids away. And that's all anybody thinks we do. And I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, let's problematize taking people's kids away and why we do child protective services and the work that we do. But also, we're involved in every situation throughout anybody's life you're going to wander into and need a social worker. You're going to need to talk about the issues that are facing our communities. You can be a community activist and organizer. You can do policy work. You can work in the juvenile justice settings, in hospitals, in jails, in domestic violence and rape crisis programs. I mean, there's so many places that you will find social workers. And I keep saying we need to have our own marketing campaign as a discipline. We need to have movies about social workers who take on the world. We need to have, we need to have books about social workers' lives that people are reading, because I think we just have to be out there and people have to see it as a job that people would want to have. And that if you want to make a difference, which they're saying the new generation, the youngest generation who's entering college, they want to make a difference. That's one of the things that's driving a lot of our students today. We need to be able to talk about that with them and say, this is actually a job and a profession where you can make a difference. Yeah. And you can partner with our friends in healthcare and nursing and business and engineering and all these other places to make differences in the community.
Yeah. So to that end, what do you see as the future of social work and the profession? And how are you getting your students prepared for that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, and we're actually trying to address it in a curriculum revision we're doing now. I think we need more focus on interprofessional work. We have always been, social workers always go into a situation and try and make connections with lots of different disciplines. But we haven't spent a lot of time on how to work well in teams and how to be a leader and how to be a follower, because not everybody can be the leader in the team. And so I think having those kinds of conversations and training with our colleagues in other disciplines. There's a group here at Vanderbilt that we're a partnership with, and I'm trying to set up something similar in Knoxville with nurses and pharmacists and medical staff and lots of different fields where we work together to talk about how do we train so we all know what each other's doing and thinking about, and work together in a seamless team where the client/patient is at the center. And what they need is what we focus on, and where we have a continuum of care and a case plan that works for them, not what's easy for us in our job. And I think that's one area that we're looking at. Another is this move towards telehealth. It's a good way to serve people in the community, in rural areas, in other places. We really need to get people used to talking to people through a screen. And people are more comfortable, but I think we have to get practitioners and professionals used to doing that. Because I think that's where we're headed. I think that, and look at what's happening now with COVID-19. Everybody's supposed to be 6 feet away and we're supposed to communicate with each other. We're all going online. We're putting our classes online all over the country. University of Washington's doing it, Vanderbilt is doing it. We're all moving in that direction to try and address a moment. But I think the moments can come more often. We have hurricanes and tornadoes and other things. I came from North Carolina where we had a really big hurricane, and it did $150 million of damage to our campus. And we have labs that are offline, and we have things that we can't do. And so we need to be tech savvy, and we need to make it work for ourselves and for our clients. And so we're trying to do some more training around that so that our students are better prepared to use technology in the work that they are doing. Well, let's turn back to you, because I've talked too much. So tell me about what your biggest surprise has been since you moved to DCS.
I think just the sheer volume of work that is done there. I didn't realize how much the different divisions of DCS handle. We have 3 major divisions: Office of Child Programs, which primarily oversees foster care and adoption services; Office of Child Safety, which of course are child protective services, investigators, and assessment workers who are making those, calls in the middle of the night, really 24 hours a day, going into people's homes and investigating allegations of child abuse and neglect. And then we have our Office of Juvenile Justice, which oversees the treatment of juveniles placed into state custody who have been adjudicated delinquent. And so we Commissioner Nichols, who, by the way, apologizes. She could not be here today. She's about to become a grandmother for the first time, so I'm kind of pinch hitting for her at the last minute. But Commissioner Nichols has often said, we serve hours-old children, and NIC babies born, and I see drug-dependent babies all the way through 19-year-olds plus. We offer independent living services for children who age out of foster care. So we have a huge population that we serve with many different needs, different treatment needs. And I guess I really just didn't realize to the extent that children and families rely on the services that we provide, or that we work with our partners to help provide, whether they're contracted providers or just community partners throughout the state.
Yeah, I get that. It's nice to come into a new setting and sort of get a sense for what's going on and help build the vision moving forward.
Right. And just, we are a 24/7 department. Just last week when the tornadoes hit, our child abuse hotline staff, they were just maybe a mile from where the tornado came through. And of course, they're working in the middle of the night. So when the tornadoes hit at 1 a.m, they were, of course, they took they found a safe place, but then the power was out. Their building, fortunately, was not damaged, but they lost power. But meanwhile, the hotline has to maintain and stay running. So they instantly went into action and kind of put together a makeshift hotline, if you will, for at least through the earlier morning hours. And then by late morning, we had our temporary backup location ready to go with phones answered. And everyone just kind of sprung into action. But it just reminds you that we are providing services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on weekends and holidays through disasters and storms. And we have to continue that service.
Yes.
So it was eye-opening last week. But like I said, it makes you feel good when all of your coworkers chip in and kind of, work together for the common cause, which is really serving children and families.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
We had some of the same thing on the Nashville campus. We were talking earlier that I started getting these emails on our listserv, and people were like, "Are you okay?" Talking to one another in Nashville, and I was like, "What's happening? I don't know what's happening." And then I went on Twitter, and one of our faculty members had written about the storm and linked to the severe weather, and I was like, "Wait a minute!" And it's because in Knoxville, I just slept through the whole thing and didn't even really know it was happening. And so, but I was so impressed with how the faculty and the staff jumped right in and started. Their first concern was students. Their first concern was, are the students okay? Do they have what they need? What are we going to do about classes? How are we going to access them? What kind of resources do we have to support the students? And do they have have what they need. And it was very impressive to me. And then very quickly it turned to what can we do to make a difference in the community, because they're social workers and they can't help themselves. And so they were quickly organizing and helping to pick up debris and clean up. And it was very impressive to me. And that honestly has been one of the best things since I moved here. I was so impressed with the faculty, staff, and students in trying to respond quickly and meet the needs in the community.
Right, and the same thing I failed to mention, obviously in Putnam County, and really in all the counties affected by the storms last week, but especially Putnam County, our social workers, our case managers were out there checking on all of our foster families and foster children. And of course, some of our foster families were impacted by the storms, lost their homes, and we had people just jump right into action. And some of our own staff were affected personally, having damage to their homes. So it was just really, it makes you feel good when you come to work for an organization that's just going to jump right in and assist and make sure that services go uninterrupted and check on the people that we serve.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So what have you found some of your surprises or I don't know, what has surprised you about your new role here at UT and in Tennessee?
Honestly, I hate to say this out loud, the biggest surprise I had is how much email. I can't even tell you. I've had leadership positions before I came here, but I am drowning in email. I felt bad because while people were speaking before, I was on email back there, and I thought, oh, they're going to think this dean is so rude, Yankee, and so, which I am. I'm sorry, I am.
I am too.
There you go. Sorry, but it is true. But I am drowning in email because there's so many different things happening all the time, and so. The first thing I had to do was go buy an Apple Watch so that it would shake when I had to go to my next meeting, because I kept getting caught up in these conversations, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be somewhere else across campus. And I'm drowning in email. At the same time, I think on a positive side, there's just so much movement happening, and there's so much discussion. When I interviewed at UTK, I had what is perhaps the best conversation about race and diversity and inequality I've had in my professional career, and it happened on an interview. And I was stunned. And we had a very good conversation about what we weren't doing in our program, what we need to be doing, how we need to support students and recruit students and retain students and graduate students of color, students from diverse backgrounds, rural students, non-traditional students, low-income students, veterans. I think we started really thinking about strategically what we needed to do and having that conversation, and then also talking about what's missing in our curriculum and how we better prepare our folks to get out and work with everybody in a way that is supportive and creative and respectful and really includes the people we work with in setting the agenda. And that was a really pleasant surprise, and honestly, it was the reason I walked out of there and called my spouse and said, this is the place I want to be. This is the place I want to be, because I really felt like there was a commitment. And before I came there, they had done an assessment, and they asked faculty, staff, and students to give them feedback on how well we're doing in these areas. And then we're rolling information out, and we have a plan that we're putting together about how we address it. So that was really kind of exciting.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how are you turning those ideas into actions? But it sounds like you all are already doing that.
Yeah, we have some pieces we've started. We started with a values retreat where we talked about what our values are and what our commitments are to one another. And then we moved on to creating some common language so that we all know what we're talking about when we talk about diversity, inequality, minoritized populations, so that we're using the same language. And then now we started talking about next steps. We've got some trainers coming in for us to be able to help folks talk about these issues in the classroom when they feel uncomfortable. And then we have other things we're planning. And then we have a big strategic planning process that's going to start in the fall. We have a brand new chancellor. If you haven't met her, you absolutely should. Chancellor Dondi Plowman is phenomenal. And she's doing her strategic plan now. So once that is set, then we're going to do ours so it plugs in and I don't have to redo mine twice.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, I think strategic plans are really important just to help drive your organization, especially when you have a large organization like
Absolutely.
you do, like we do. It's not your daily, day-to-day duties or job responsibilities, but it's just an overall arching mission, and it's kind of like marching orders of how you are gonna implement those day-to-day responsibilities.
Yes. And you have to live it, right? If you create a plan and you put it on a shelf, then people get kind of jaded about it. They're like, oh God, new dean, new plan, we'll never pay attention to it. We just sort of hobble along. And I don't want to do that. I mean, if we're going to spend our time, we have to have measurable benchmarks, we have to check in, we have to feedback, and we have to make it a growing, living document. Because otherwise, it's a waste of people's time.
Right.
I've sat through too many of those. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
you're like, oh gosh, another one of those. So I think I'm hopeful about it.
So yeah.
Are we at our time? We need to do our
I think so.
surprise
Okay,
question.
so-
Oh, okay. Let's see what the surprise question is. Ooh, I think they think I can't see. You all could probably read this. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received? Why don't you go first?
Probably just to be best, to do your best every day and everything that you do, and just if you live by that thought, by that process, then everything else will kind of fall into place. So just always give your best to everything in your life and every aspect that you know, and everything will kind of fall into place after that. So.
I think for me, the best piece of advice I've gotten was in a leadership development program, and I'm an extrovert, so I like to talk. And they said, stop talking and ask better questions. And so I'm trying to practice that every day, asking better questions, and I'm going to practice right now, stop talking.
So
Thank you.
thank you.
Please don't let me be misunderstood.